I've been working for the last summer for the island of Scotland Cay, which is in the Abaco Islands in the Bahamas.
Welcome to Profession Session, where I interview young professionals, business owners, and entrepreneurs in all kinds of different areas and talk about their stories, how they got into what they do, and the things that made them successful so far. I'm your host, Brody Vincent, and today my guest is Blake Linquist. Blake, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. It was an obvious choice. You're a good friend, and you do really cool stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Dude, so am I. Yeah.
Let's do it. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see in the background here, we'll get into this a little bit later, but this is Blake's website and portfolio.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into all of it. He's got a lot of stuff to talk about.
It's been a long time coming.
Awesome.
I'm happy to finally be here.
Me too, man. Let's do it.
Yep.
So I think a good place to get started would just be kind of your background. How'd you get into doing everything in the first place?
Yeah, definitely. So the real background and crux of kind of where my artistic and creative aspects come from and aspirations have just been my family. I have an older brother who almost got his bachelor's in fine arts, and in my opinion, he's my favorite artist.
That's awesome.
My father's an architect as well. So growing up, when I was really little, there was always, me and my dad sitting down and doing coloring books and drawing and sketching, and I would see him at his workstation, his little drafting table he always had set up upstairs, drawing and sketching and stuff. So
yeah, art was in the family business.
Yeah, definitely. I was always really interested by that. So I think that's where it started at. And then when I got into high school, I was always watching my brother work really late at night. When I was in middle school, he was always doing artwork, AP art and stuff.
Cool.
And so I was always really inspired and interested by that. And so I started doing that a little bit when I got into high school, when I went to Lake Mary High School. So
here in Orlando.
Yeah,
yep.
Northeast Orlando.
Yeah.
Right down the
That's
street.
Awesome.
So Orlando's home for me, and I've kind of lived all over the state. So
you were telling me about that a little off air. You've been everywhere in the state recently.
Yeah, everywhere except for Tampa, but that's where I'm headed soon.
The accomplished Florida man.
I know, right?
I love it.
Yeah, so everywhere except for Tampa, and then I've spent a little bit of time down south just to visit friends and have fun and
of course,
kind of.
We were talking a little bit about Gasparilla.
Yeah,
that's a little introduction to Tampa.
Yeah, a couple Gatsby trips for sure while in college and whatnot. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So kind of been all over and got into architecture or got into art first, I should say, at a young age. We should mention you went to FSU for your undergrad.
Yeah, I did 5 years at FSU. It was a wild ride trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
That's how it is for everyone, though.
Yeah. I feel like it was beneficial for it to be that way. I did a program called Exploratory when I first got there. FSU's interesting, them being a social sciences school. So that when you get there, if you don't know exactly what you want to do, there's this exploratory major where you can see what the options are. You meet with a counselor bi-monthly, and what you do is you kind of see what all the different majors are and how you might fit into those and what might be your interest or what not might be your interest.
Do you pick kind of maybe a couple that might interest you and focus on those?
Yeah, there's an initial consultation that they do with you, and you're like, all right, well, what are you interested in? What'd you do in high school? And so I was really interested when I got into FSU. I wanted to do something industrial design, which is a simple way to explain it is if you have a lamp or something like that, is they design it and then the industrial engineer kind of will go through and figure out how to build it, if that makes sense.
Kind of working backwards.
So I was really interested in doing something like that.
So would you say even from a young age and getting into undergrad before you figured out exactly what you wanted to do, you probably knew that it was going to be something design related?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Cool.
I don't know. I always got a lot of enjoyment out of creating and drawing and just, being able to take something that's in my mind's eye and put it on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you based on that.
Cool.
Because I've asked this question before to other creatives, and it's always a different, interesting answer.
Yeah.
What would you say being a creative means to you personally?
I think it's the ability to be intuitive. At least in my experience. The strongest aspect I'd say about that is just being able to think quick on your feet and to be able to see something. And at least I'll see something that I like, whether it's a piece of art or, an environment or a building or something like that, and I'll take, an aspect of it and, I really like that, and you kind of put it in the back of your head, and then, you could take a little something from somewhere else, and then, being able to put it together, and, it's this witch's brew.
Yeah, I love that. That's kind of how I do it with the podcast. Is I'm influenced by a lot of other interview shows, podcasts, even stuff that's not an interview show or podcast. That's just interesting content that I like. You kind of just take your favorite elements from everything and put them together.
Yeah, and artists have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've always kind of known that and felt that, and that kind of. You come into undergrad with that in mind, and then you go through this program, and then where do you kind of go from that program?
So when I was in high school, I did a lot of, I did AP art. So I was doing college level art while I was in high school. I had a really great teacher, Lake Mary. She's no longer there anymore, but Miss Miller was like a huge inspiration to me. And
that's awesome.
She was always there for me when I had like rough times. So she was really, in essence, like what a good teacher is. They're a mentor, a friend, and somebody you can count on. But she always really inspired me to like kind of push my artistic limits and to not to settle for, where I was, and to keep looking at, what could be new or what's something I could look at differently. And so I had those credits, those college level credits. And when I went to FSU, through the exploratory program, I had decided that I wanted to do business. I wanted to do business finance. So that's what I had like settled on for a while.
That's what I graduated in.
Yeah.
Look what I'm doing now.
Right? So I ended up getting a minor in business, but I had a hard time getting through financial accounting and all these different things. So
terrible class.
Oh my gosh, it's
horrible.
At Florida State, it's the weed out class. So you can't pass that.
Financial accounting, business finance, nightmare classes.
Yeah, and
I saw a lot of good men fall to those classes.
That's too funny. Yeah, and one that really drove me into the ground was financial management of the firm. That was like one of the last classes I needed to take to get my business minor when I was doing art there, and I passed it with like a 79.6 or something.
Oh my god! Because you have to get a B for a lot of those classes. There's like a couple ones.
I was like 0.1 away.
So
if I would have done one question different on the final exam, I wouldn't have gotten it. So thank God I passed that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I was struggling with business, and I went in and I had a meeting with my counselor for that exploratory program, and she kind of explained it to me. She said, you have this artistic and like creative background that you sound passionate about. When I'm talking to you, you sound really passionate about. Why aren't you looking into wanting to do that? And I probably gave some silly answer. I don't really remember what my reasoning was at the time, but
well, a lot of times until you really get out into the world and start seeing a lot of other opportunities, people have this kind of preconceived notion that it's hard to make a career out of the arts and the creative fields.
Yeah.
And it might have been something like that, kind of just like nagging you, that might have been holding you back. I know that's happened to many people I know.
Yeah.
I think it was something like that? Or?
Yeah, I think it's like an apprehension just because you hear about the starving artist, like somebody that's really passionate about what they want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Being creative, but not having the financial means to like support themselves.
Not knowing how to direct it necessarily and monetize it.
Yeah, exactly. And I always knew that was very important to me, having the family that I had. And, and as I've gotten older, I'm more and more grateful that I have the family that I have, the support system and stuff. So
absolutely.
I'm very blessed. So I was doing the exploratory thing, and my counselor just basically said, you wouldn't take a Ferrari off-roading. What he was trying to explain is that people are built differently. So there's people that, are built to do something like business, right? And so they will succeed and have a more fulfilling kind of career doing that. And then there's people that are built, a little bit differently. Maybe they're more creative. And so if you take somebody that, in my kind of example that I'm laying out here, I was creative and was trying to do this business thing, and it wasn't the right fit for me. So I decided that last minute, right before, I think it was my sophomore year, the beginning of my sophomore year, I decided that I wanted to do art, and I had these credits already from high school. So it
allowed you to kind of catch back up.
So it allowed me to like catch up for time that I would have lost from, being interested in the business thing.
That's awesome.
And so then I started, doing all my art stuff, which I was so happy to do. And Florida State has
probably just felt way more passionate right away.
No, immediately the burden was lifted off my shoulders. shoulders.
That's got to be a great feeling.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And the professors there are great. I met a lot of really great people. Florida State has, in my opinion, one of the best, art programs in the state, and if not the southeast of the United States.
That's awesome.
And so yeah, I'm a classically trained oil painter and printmaker, and then I have my
some of it up here.
Yeah,
we'll get into a little bit more of it.
Yeah, the website has been really helpful with me, like just kind of keeping my portfolio together. So
yeah, and we'll touch into it a little bit more as we kind of catch up on your background. But I was looking through your website. I've seen it before today, but I was looking back through it today, and every time I've looked at your website, there's more and more cool stuff on there. It's really impressive stuff.
I try to keep it updated as much as I can with the work that I'm doing, but sometimes it slips away from me. It's kind of just a living document. That's the nice thing about having it in the cloud is that, you can access it whenever.
Exactly. Just keep throwing new stuff on.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So we kind of caught up to undergrad and you're switching to art. So you kind of go through the rest of your art program, and let's maybe catch up to like the time you're graduating. Okay. Did you have anything along the way during your undergrad that shaped things more, or kind of just going through the art program, graduating was the focus for a while?
For a long time, going through the art program and graduating was like the focus. I just knew that I wanted to graduate. I think a lot of people, when you're in your undergrad, like it's just, college is, it's an interesting time where you're meeting new people, you're doing different things, and you're trying to like navigate your way. And so I think it was, it was probably a couple months before I like graduated, and I like knew finally like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like I'm graduating, I'm getting an art degree.
Come up above the water. And
yeah, literally.
Oh yeah, the world.
And so there was this question of like, what's next? Like, what's the next thing that I do? And so I sat and I slept on it, and I tried to figure out what I wanted to do. And, growing up with my father being a landscape architect, I had always like kind of seen him doing his work and was interested in it, but didn't really know if that's what I wanted to do. And I actually started to think back about some of my art history like classes that I had. So, being an art student, you have to take art history, and I'm super into history. I just think that it's like, I don't know, it's a large inspiration for a lot of the artwork that I've done, and you can see it in kind of some of the themes that I've,
yeah, I think you mentioned this one right here.
Yeah, so that's Revo Abbey. It's one of the prints that I made in my printmaking class. I think that was like my second year. But yeah, so I started thinking about art history, and throughout human history, a lot of artists, they kind of transitioned from doing like art and 2D like sketching, and then you go to painting, and then you go from painting to sculpture, and like doing, whether it's marble or it's clay or whatever you want to get into. And then from 3D, a lot of them would make at least in classical terms, a lot of them would make the transition to architecture.
Okay.
And so,
kind of a natural progression.
Yeah, definitely. And so you see that in a lot of like the classic masters, from the Renaissance and stuff. They a lot of them made the transition from, painting murals and doing stuff to like then designing and doing, architecture for these spaces and stuff.
Starting out very 2-dimensional, getting more and more 3-dimensional.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
Cool. And maybe even 4-dimensional. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really interested in kind of seeing what that looked like, and then I started thinking back to one of my classes that I had. I took a class at FSU called Monastic Art and Architecture, and I had to take, the reason why I took it is it was for me to graduate with my art degree, I had to take one graduate level like credit course of art history. And so there's like all these different very like specific avenues that you can go if you're going to do art history.
Right.
And so
so why that one?
Well, I think it's because, my father being in landscape architecture and like me always being really interested in architecture, like you cover it in survey 1 and 2, which are like the just general history of art and human history. But you don't really get too into it. And so that was the only architecture class that they had offered in the art history department. Okay. So I took it, and it was crazy because I was like, I think one of the only undergrad kids.
Yeah.
Everyone else is in there like writing their dissertation,
wow,
their thesis about it. So,
that's a cool thing to get exposed to.
Yeah, definitely. And the coolest thing about it is there was a professor, his name was Dr. Kyle Killian, and I think he's still up there, but he was like so excited and so passionate about the subject matter that it like really inspired me. And so like I went to the class the first week just to kind of feel it out and see if this is something I wanted to do, and if not, I would drop it and add a different class.
Sure.
But the way that Dr. Killian would like explain the like history behind these sites and like the areas that we were researching was like really like it made you feel like you're there almost, or you were at that point in time.
Those are the best professors always.
Yeah.
I have a professor in my MBA program that like it's for accounting, but he somehow makes accounting interesting by just like getting into these very real world examples. He's super passionate, just super outspoken about it. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And we actually enjoy the accounting class. But
Yeah, that's I hated accounting. So.
yeah, I did in undergrad too, so that's why I was like blown away. But it all comes down to having a passionate teacher.
I think it's just anyone, when you meet people that have like a really strong drive, and you can tell that they like sincerely like mean the work, like the line of work that they're in. That's like a very special attribute to have. So,
It is.
Anyone listening, like if there's something that you really feel passionate about, or you notice like I'm a lot more happy when I do this, and I'm very knowledgeable about this, like I would, encourage anyone out there that's trying to figure out what they want to do for their career to kind of.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
That's kind of the pivotal moment of your journey that we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
You made that decision.
Yeah, definitely. But Dr. Killian was like super inspirational, and so we had to write like a term paper for the class. That was the only assignment, is to write a term paper. I think we had like little quizzes on readings and stuff like that along the way, but the major assignment was the term paper. And so there were some people in there that were writing their dissertation and had been like working on it for semesters and semesters. But we got exposed to a bunch of different sites throughout Europe of these monasteries, and so basically, I chose a monastery called Revo Abbey, which is in England, northeast England, I'm pretty sure.
And that's this one up here.
Yeah, and so I did a piece of art on it because I was so inspired by it. But Revo Abbey is a Cistercian monastery in England, and like part of the process of researching this site was learning about how the monks, the whole purpose of being a monk was to like remove yourself from society and to like purify your soul and your mind and to, be devout to God. And so it was like very interesting to see how they would specifically place these sites for these communities like miles away from the closest like source of water or the closest, other source of community or, civilization. And, like to do that, they'd have to reroute water for, hundreds of miles and, bringing stone and, marble and all different types of stuff to build these structures. And you see like the gradual kind of progression of the site. And so at the time I was really interested in like what the monastic practices were. What the monastic practices were and what they were doing. And I came to figure out that it was like the start of what landscape architecture is, and so that like was my first kind of insight into landscape architecture.
Now, what area of architecture is your dad in primarily?
So my father's a landscape architect.
Okay, cool.
And so I grew up, seeing him do a lot of stuff.
But this gave some like really deep context and like new meaning to it.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's it's like the primordial kind of state of what landscape architecture is today, is like the development practices that they used.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't even know what landscape architecture really is, but landscape architecture is a lot of times we're the architect of the site, right? So if there's a plot of land that's been undeveloped, we'll come in and we'll do an analysis of the site and see what the topography is and see how the water moves on the site and inventory all the existing foliage and take notes of what's desirable and undesirable and what's to remain and what's not to remain.
Wow.
And then even everything from, depending on the size and the scale of the site, is putting in the right of way and figuring out where the roads are going to go and figuring out where you can do land planning within that. And so it's figuring out, this is where the commercial district's going to be. This is where, the residential district's going to be. This is where, I don't know, a certain other type of residential like dwellings and units are going to be. So you can do big scale stuff like that all the way down to some landscape architects do just small scale residential design, which is,
Sure.
Your front yard and your backyard or your pool and, amenities like that. And then there's also really cool stuff that people do like, resort hotel and design, which is like entertainment-based design, which is cool. And in Orlando here, there's a lot of that. So
a lot of different areas.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you're going through becoming a landscape architect in the early stages, how do you niche down in that and figure out what area you want to get into? Is that, I guess it probably looks different for everyone.
Yeah, I think for me it was like what I was exposed to in my classes and in past internship experiences that I had had. But I think everyone kind of figures it out differently.
Sure.
There's some people that, are very interested and they come in knowing that they want to do that. And there's some people that, it's just like anything. You got to kind of, put your foot in the water and figure out, what's best to you.
So what did that process look like for you personally?
I think it was, schooling and also, past internships and, being exposed to different, forms of development and forms of landscape architecture.
And so you had seen this in your class and kind of gone through some internships. I guess a good place to go next might be to talk about your first internship in landscape architecture.
Yeah. So the first internship I did was here in Orlando for a firm called EDSA, and they do a lot of resort-based, large-scale hotel and resort-based.
Good place for it in Orlando.
Yeah, definitely. And so I got exposed to a lot of that. And so there's actually some of that on the website here.
In this section?
Oh, no. If you go back to work, or you just click there you go. If you go to landscape architecture, you can see some of the stuff. So these are just...
This is really impressive stuff, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah. So these are just some renderings that I did at a workshop when I was interning there. And it's just, it's amenity-based design and, pools and cabanas and, little planting beds and whatnot. I was really, really blessed to have great kind of leadership and great, people to work underneath. Derek Sissel was, a guy that I worked underneath for a couple internships, and he really kind of held my hand and showed me the ropes and, showed me what he was interested in and asked me what I was interested in and, would, show me this is how you do this is how you do that, and then, give me leeway and, tell me to go, like, now you show me what you would want to do type of deal. And he had a really, really great hand. So some of the stuff that you saw up there of just the kind of sketches and whatnot, he really was instrumental in like showing me like, this is how we, this is how we do this line, and this is how we, do the little stone bricks, and this is how we, do the different types of, plants and the palm trees. And so there's a lot of little tips and tricks that you see that like go into this, but, he was really instrumental in that, and so for that, I'm really thankful. He's a great guy.
That's awesome. Yeah, this stuff is really cool.
Yeah, and then you see more of the nuts and bolts of, the stuff you see at the front is, very flashy. It's the more, artistic side of it, and then a lot of this stuff is, stuff for, hardscape plans and details and whatnot, tree plans. And so a lot of the stuff that you're seeing here is, work that I did for, I helped on for either Disney or Universal or, the cabanas that are up a little bit. The stuff that like this right here was something really interesting that I did for the Trump International Resort Hotel in Lido, Indonesia, and so that's where So that's where the site was located, and so.
So this firm is located in Orlando, but they do work all over.
Yeah, they have a couple different offices all over the United States, but that was like kind of my first kind of introduction to it, and so I learned a lot from this, and then from there, I interned with them a couple times, and from there. I moved on to intern for a firm called Kimley Horn in Jacksonville, and that's
where we met.
That's where
yeah,
in Jacksonville. That's where we met. And Kimley Horn was a great firm as well, and they helped to expose me to a lot of different things, a lot of different types of forms of landscape architecture. There's not very much of it on here, but yeah, great stuff. And I had a great time last summer, and everyone that I worked with was super welcoming, and so I'm really grateful for that experience as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit about some of your internships. What we have not mentioned yet, except maybe in passing, is that you also completed your master's recently.
Yeah,
So
I did.
You did that as you were in internships. You're a busy guy.
Yeah,
You have been since I met you. Yeah.
My folks always, like growing up, it was always every summer, every winter, you had to either have an internship or you had to have a job. So
yeah.
it was always like
it's a good precedent to set.
Working. So we can kind of bring this full circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about the exploratory thing at FSU, and we talked about me getting into art and like that being my passion, and I kind of lost it for a little bit thinking to do business, and then I got back to art. And then when I was at FSU, it was 3 months. I said it was like 3 months before I was about to graduate, and it hit me. Oh my God, you're about to graduate and you have an art degree. What do I do now? You know what I mean? And for a lot of different professions, it's like, oh, well, I could just, take the job at the insurance company and just work at the, do the thing.
Very clear-cut path forward.
You know what I mean? Like, that might not be exactly what you want to do, but for the time being, you can do it. With artists,
there's at least clear steps to get to where you want to.
And FSU did a really good job of trying to prepare us the best that they could, and they always reminded us, with your art degree, you're not, like, left high and dry, but I can't forget that feeling that I had of, oh my God, I'm about to graduate and I have an art degree. Like, what do I do? You know what I mean? Like, how do I apply that? It's not like there's a corporate office that will, I mean, there are some huge conglomerates that, hire people as art directors and whatnot, but
it's probably ultra competitive.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And very connection based, I would think.
Exactly. And I'm one artist out of, probably millions of art students in America. But anyways, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I thought, well, maybe grad school. Maybe I want to look at, a graduate degree. Maybe I want to do architecture. There's all these, historic, artists that, transitioned over to architecture. And
you'd had this project in your printmaking class that kind of showed you the basis of landscape architecture, and
yeah, definitely
really stroked your passion.
If you want to scroll down, there's like a lot of other stuff that you can see, like the classics, like classic artists. They kind of really inspired a lot of the work that I do. A lot of my stuff, especially my prints, are like very like from classically sourced material. And even with my fine art, if you some of my paintings.
This is some of my favorite stuff. This like this one, the one with the oranges that we'll see in a second.
Yeah,
I love these.
Yeah, and those are all really big pieces of art. Like
I've seen the in-person versions.
Yeah.
They're crazy big.
Yeah, I like to do big pieces of art. It just really, I feel like it makes art more exciting.
It does.
Everyone, when they go to, at least this is my impression, when I go to an art gallery or I go to a museum, when I see you turn the corner and you're like, whoa, and you see that big piece of art, it always like leaves a more lasting impression than some of the smaller stuff, so.
I love it.
Yeah. Oranges, welcome
Bigger,
to Florida.
better. Yeah.
You can tell I'm a Florida boy, right?
Oh, yeah, I love it.
So funny, yeah.
That's probably part of what does it for me. I love this one.
Yeah, it's cool. I made that for my mom. She has that hanging in her kitchen.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's smaller though. That's one of my smaller pieces.
Okay, cool. Yeah. This one, however, huge.
Yeah, that was
I see that one.
Yeah, it's probably the size of I'd say half this wall.
It's like I would call it probably like 1.5 or twice the size of this TV if you had it vertical. Like it's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. Doing big canvases like that are always really exciting. And on this piece, I actually remember specifically I spent about 60 to 65 hours of contact time. So that's
paint to canvas time.
That's paint to canvas time.
Wow.
And so you can look, all right, so that's,
wow,
4-5 hour sessions, which is really stretching it. 5 hours standing in front of the canvas can be tough. So it's 4 or 5 hour, sessions. So that's, a long time. That's I did that over, I think half a semester was that assignment.
Wow.
So this is for one of the assignments. But the cool thing about FSU and the oil painting class that I did this in was the assignment was, do something that's do something that like you're passionate about. Like, what are you know what I mean? Just paint whatever you're passionate about. And so, a lot of times it's, let's just, do, it'll be an assignment. We're going to do cubism. We're going to do surrealism. We're going to do, different types of colors. And, color theory was a really enlightening class that I took at FSU too. But and there's some of that influence on this. But yeah, it was just, what's important to you. And so, I included the oranges because, I'm from Florida, and the hibiscus flowers because that's my favorite type of flower, and the kind of the palm frond in the back because, Florida's full of palms. And then you can see the drapery on the left side. That's like, it goes back to that classical theme. Like, I'm very inspired by classical art. And then the center there is like an abstraction of a National Geographic famous photograph.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, of this woman this refugee from, I think, Pakistan. Her name's Gullah, and so that's what this is titled. So yeah, it's just cool stuff. And then if you go down, there's some other stuff of this is Leonardo da Vinci. It's one of his sketches called Leda and the Swan, and Leda and the Swan's an old Greek like parable, or an old Greek like myth, basically. And so it's like a really famous. So the original piece of art that Leonardo did has been burned or destroyed, or it might not have been Leonardo, or he might have just done a copy of it. But back in the day, the old masters, they'd go to the museums and they would like just draw the drawings.
Wow.
It's like a really like famous and like very popular thing to do is you
kind of try to recreate it on your own.
The best you could, yeah.
Yeah.
So his version is very similar to what you see here. This
is the Blake Linquist rendition.
Yeah, definitely. And this one's big too. And what you can't see is there's in the background. You might even be able to zoom in. I'm not sure, but in the background there's all these I did prints of all these different architectural trellises and arches and and capitals and different forms of classic kind of architecture from ancient Rome and Greece
and that was kind of putting your own touch on it too. I love that.
Yeah, it just breaks down the white space in the back and kind of ties the theme together. And then making that frame was interesting. I made that frame within, I had an art exhibition at FSU in Tallahassee, and I had to get all my stuff hung up on the walls and put it together for my, my exhibition, and I put that together last minute, but I'm really happy that I did.
Yeah, that's badass.
I love that. Yeah, no, it's kind of hard for me sometimes to talk about my art just because I don't know. It's like any artist, you're always your own biggest critic. So I look at this and I see so many things that I would oh my gosh,
things you would do differently.
I hope nobody sees that when they're watching this later.
No, I just see a really, really cool piece of art. That's the cool thing.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. So
getting back to your master's.
To my master's. So I had my art degree, right? And I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I talked to my folks and I talked to my mom. And my mom's my rock. She's a saint. She's just always been there for me, always pushing me, always, making me a better man. And she's like, well, the GRE's coming up. There's a couple more tests left that you can take. As they schedule them. She's like, just go take it and see where you place, right? And so I went and took
just
the
to
GRE.
Dip your toes in. Yeah,
exactly. It goes back to put your toe in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
I went and I took the GRE, and I was looking at all right, well, if I want to do architecture, if I want to do building architecture, that's originally what I wanted to do, was building architecture. What's the score I need, and what do I need to do? And then as I sent out was preparing applications and waiting for my GRE results, I really started looking into landscape architecture and decided, maybe this is what I really want to do. I had done the internships in the past, but I was always wanting to see all right, I've seen what landscape architecture is, but I really want to see what building architecture might be like, because a building architect is different from a landscape architect. We're the architect of the site. The building architect does a lot more of the structural design of the building. You know what I mean?
Probably a lot of working with engineers, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we both work with engineers, but building architects, especially when it comes to cool things like skyscrapers, right?
We were just talking the other day about Chicago. You said a lot of your family's from there. I was just there this past weekend.
Yeah.
Some of the best building architecture I've ever seen.
Cool,
probably the best I've ever seen in my life. It was
very
incredible.
cool. Chicago is a really, really cool town.
Yeah. For anyone who has not been to Chicago, if you ever go, do the architectural tour.
Yeah, I can't suggest it enough.
To.
Yeah, it's really cool. My whole family's from up there. My mom's the second youngest of 10, so I have...
Wow.
So I actually just went and visited my cousin in Montana, but we figured out that I have 25 cousins.
My mom's the youngest of 5, and I always thought that was a lot. Second youngest of 10 is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Lots of uncles and aunts and stuff.
That's awesome, though.
So, yeah.
Big family reunions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love going up to Chicago and just, kind of touching back to my family's roots and stuff. So,
absolutely. So you were kind of thinking the idea of building architecture, but ended up kind of coming back to landscape architecture.
Yeah, I sat down and, had some conversations with my father, who's a landscape architect, and he saw the creative influence in me. And building architects, they can be creative for sure. There's a lot of creativity that goes into building architecture, but also for what I just, being passionate about Florida and growing up in the outdoors and stuff like that, I just felt like it was a better kind of avenue for me to go to.
You see it in your art. I mean, you see it in the influence of your art, kind of that outdoorsy aspect of it.
Yeah, I do lots of flowers and, sketches of, different...
And you're wearing palm trees and flowers right now.
Yeah, I got my palm trees on right now.
I love it.
So I decided that's what I wanted to look into. And so I took the GRE, and then I decided, all right, I'm going to send out these applications to landscape architecture schools. And so I sent out a bunch. I sent one to NC State, to UGA, to UF. I think I sent one to Auburn.
And those are some of the best landscape architecture programs basically?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Harvard is a really great program. UGA is a really great program. UF is, arguably one of the best programs in the nation.
They have a lot of the best programs.
Yeah. Definitely. And so I sent out, I was waiting for my GRE results to come back, and I got my results back, and I quickly just added up all the numbers, and I was like, oh, dang, I didn't get what I needed to get. And so I called up my folks, and I was like, yeah, I didn't get the numbers that I needed to get. And funny story, my mom was like, what are your numbers? And took them all down and then hung up the phone, and then she added them up, and I had miscounted.
Oh, right? Really?
And so I got the exact number that I needed to hit to apply to all these schools. So
it reminds me of that 79.6 earlier in that.
Yeah, exactly. yeah, definitely. So I hit the mark that I needed to get, and then I sent out all these applications. And I remember being in my fraternity house when I was living there at FSU. My senior year, and I didn't really know if I was going to get anything back. I thought it was super competitive, and it is super competitive, but and then somebody came up and was like, hey, this was in your mailbox, and they hand me a letter from NC State, and I open it up, and it's like, you've been accepted. And then the next day there were 2 more letters that came in. God. And UGA sent me a you've been accepted, and I was waiting on UF. I was waiting on UF. It's
close to home. You're still in Florida.
Yeah,
great program.
The reasoning behind that, I would have loved to have gone other places and have the experience of going out of state, but financially speaking, it just was to stay in state and do the in-state tuition was just the smartest thing for me at the time. And looking at student loans and how that all works, that's when it because I had Florida prepaid at Florida State, so my college, my tuition and everything was paid for.
Yeah.
So then it was oh wait, if I'm going to grad school, I got to pay for this myself.
And it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah, it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
And so I was waiting, and I was waiting, and I was waiting, and then I remember I got the acceptance letter and, called my folks, and my mom was crying and all emotional and whatnot. But it felt really awesome to, to get that feeling of, I didn't think that I was going to be able to achieve this, right? But I was actually able to go and achieve that. And throughout my entire life, there's been a lot of situations like that where I don't mean to say that I sell myself short, but
you mentioned before that you're very critical on yourself as an artist.
Yeah,
so that
exactly.
might be where it comes from.
I think that's exactly where it comes from. And
throughout the time I've known you, you have always been like that, and I feel like that's something that's always going to drive you towards success. Like, you're always very critical of everything you do because you want to do things right.
Yeah.
Like, you want it done the right way.
Well, I mean, even with artwork, when I do a piece like this, I see it like in my mind.
Right.
Like, I can see the finished product like in my head. Like, I know where it's going to go, and then it's just all about, can I replicate it? Can I get what's in here out onto the paper?
That's very interesting. That's kind of how I felt about designing this studio, actually.
It looks really good.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'm happy for you.
This is actually the first one we're doing where I've got like the full studio view in. Actually, by the time this interview comes out, I might have the rug in here too, and I've kind of been waiting on that to make like a full announcement of the studio, so it might be timed perfectly now that I think about it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We'll have to get some. I'll have to give you like a print or something. Get some art in here.
I would love to put some of your art in here. I really would.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I love. I mentioned earlier, I love this one. I love like these, like the Florida style stuff you do. Honestly, all of these are awesome.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, we should show all of these.
Well, you don't have to get through all of it, but
badass.
yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff that's up there.
But yeah, without getting too off topic, you were talking about how you kind of, when you're going to design something, you see it clearly in your head.
Yeah.
And then before that, we were talking about how you've had many of these moments where something you previously thought might not be possible, all of a sudden you had this moment where it was possible. And I think those are really cool moments.
Yeah, it's fulfilling for sure, but I'm trying to remember what people call it. It's like imposter syndrome. You know what I mean?
I've talked about that before.
Yeah.
A lot, actually. I've had that a couple times.
It's like I always feel like with the successes in my life, I'm like do it like I feel like
I did this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that, you know what I mean? And so
because you're doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
So if you haven't done something before and all of a sudden you're being put in the position to be doing it, you're like, well, how would I do this? I haven't done it before.
Yeah.
It's doing something completely new.
It's the learning curve of it, I think.
Exactly. I think putting yourself in positions where you get imposter syndrome is a really good thing.
Okay.
Those are big growth moments. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Because I've had some big moments like that too, where, moments for me were, right out of college, and I didn't end up continuing with this career path, but it was very transformative for me. I was a personal trainer. I think you knew that about me.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a lot of ways that set me up to have some skills that I was able to leverage into other things later. But getting into that in the first place, I started training people, and I was like, are people going to find out that I don't know what the hell I'm doing? Like when's the ball going to drop?
Right, yeah.
And like you just have those moments where you're like you work so hard to get into some new position, to get some awesome internship, or in your case, to get into this master's program, and you're like, when are people going to find out I'm not supposed to be here?
Well, I think that it's also like you said, it's a learning moment, but I think it's also like, it's just like, I don't know how to put it in words. It's one of those things that like you got to take stock in what you have achieved. You know what I mean? And sometimes I don't give myself enough credit, and so that's something I've been trying to like work on, throughout the couple years of my life. Even.
Justifying where you're at.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah.
Well, we mentioned before off air. I was saying it sounds like a lot of this stuff happened pretty quick, and you were like, it did, but also it didn't. Like it took a while to get here. Like you spent a lot of hard work. You could see it if you just go through your website with a lot of the stuff you've done. Mm-hmm. It's been a lot of hard work that you've put in to get to this point.
Well, yeah, I've been in school. Thankfully it's over, but I've been in school for 8.5 years. Mm-hmm. So, and there was no like overlap. Well, I had 10 days after I received my diploma, and like shook my dean's hand at Florida State, I had to move out of Tallahassee, find somewhere to live in Gainesville, like move all my stuff in like across the state and start classes. So like there was like
I knew you at this point, right? Did I know you did you have your internship in Jacksonville during your undergrad?
No.
So I met you like right after this.
Yeah, like right after it. Yeah.
Because I remember hearing this story about how you just like all of a sudden like had to make this crazy change.
Yeah, and so then all of a sudden I was at UF doing my master's of landscape architecture there, which was great. I had a great experience there. Great faculty, really great support, and it's a great institution and university. And so I'm really happy that I was able to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it got you to where you're at today.
Yeah. So it was an uphill battle, but we made it.
You made it, man.
Sleepless nights.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers, brother.
So that kind of catches us up to a lot of your background and where we're at today. Let's maybe use this as a transition point. So you graduate and get your master's, and you were working during your whole master's and some of these internships we talked about before. But you get out of your master's and you graduated recently. Was it May of this year?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you graduated May of this year, and then now you spent the summer actually in the Bahamas. Not the whole summer, but you spent like the summer kind of working on a project in the Bahamas, and you were just there.
Yeah, so I was really fortunate when I was at UF, and I'm excited to kind of speak about this because a lot of people that
because we haven't even got to catch up on this privately yet.
Yeah. I've been all over the world these last couple months, and it's been kind of crazy because when I was at UF, when I was about to graduate, we have to do a traditional thesis, right? And so me being passionate about Florida and about coastal communities and whatnot, that's kind of the route that I did, that I like studied. And we had this class before it's the final spring semester, right before you start your final year. And you take a research studies class, right? And they teach you.
So this is your like quote unquote junior year of your master's, kind of like the spring before the fall and spring that will set you up to graduate.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so we do this research studies class, right? And it's just all about how to search for scholarly articles, which a lot of people already know because they, write essays and do all that stuff. But it's like how to really narrow down what you're looking for, and especially within the field of landscape architecture, it's a lot of a smaller kind of
pool to pull from.
Yeah, pool to pull from. And so I did a bunch of and so we look up these articles and then we write like short little, assessments of them.
Okay.
And then we write a big paper at the end of the semester, but the whole like task of it was write whatever you're interested in. So I was always writing about coastal communities and the Caribbean, and a lot of what I wrote about was ecotourism as a sustainable development practice for developing countries. So like I was looking at like Belize and like different spots throughout the Caribbean and South America, and like looking at how they use ecotourism as a means to
help the economy. That's cool.
So, and it's a huge thing throughout South America and especially the Caribbean.
So, I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot here. Mm-hmm. You could just give one if there's one that really stands out, but top 3 like big standout things that you got from that, like standout things from that.
I think it would be like learning to, this is going to sound crazy, but like learning how to really analyze like a body of work. So in what sense, or where's that question?
So like top 3 things that you got out of
sustainable
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant about like
no,
not
the class. Yeah, that would be a difficult thing to really elaborate on. That I feel like that gets kind of abstract. But top 3 things that you got out of like studying sustainable ecotourism.
The big thing is the market for it. That's like the big thing that stands out. Everyone wants to go. They call it glamping, right?
Yes.
Everyone wants to go.
Yeah, I was just looking at a trip with those. Have you heard of these like RV camps where they're like redesigned RVs and they have camps of like 50 of them in like national parks?
Oh yeah.
And you stay in them. Yeah, that's like the best example I can think of glamping.
It's even cooler than that. They take old storage units in like the shipping containers. I mean, the old shipping containers.
Yeah.
And they like turn them into little like cabins,
cities.
basically.
They have it's not a camping thing, but they have like a little like bar city district in old Las Vegas made out of those shipping containers.
Oh, no way.
Super cool. If you ever go, you would probably love it. Yeah, it's super neat. It's literally like you walk in and it's this whole kind of like plaza of these shipping containers that are like double and triple stacked up. There's like stairs up to them. There's bars and restaurants and stuff.
Way.
It's so neat. Yeah,
it's awesome.
Oh yeah, I don't remember what it's called, but it's in like the old Vegas area.
I would love to. Yeah.
Yeah, you go ahead and keep talking about what you were talking about. I'll see if I can find it. You were talking about glamping.
Yeah. So the three kind of key takeaways. Number one is just there's a huge market for it, especially with the onset of the international pandemic. You know, everyone wanted to go camping. Everyone wanted to get outside. Everyone wanted to go on a trip. So there's that. And then a lot of the stuff I focused on was like kind of revolved around like coral reefs and like that sort of tourism, right? Like scuba diving and snorkeling and stuff, you know, just being from Florida. The
different little excursion and attraction stuff that like that areas like that bring people for.
Yeah. And so I really got into this book called Authentic Eco Lodges. Oh, wow.
Cool. Let me just go to images. That might be a little bit better.
Definitely.
This place is so cool. Yeah, it's like this.
Container
Park.
Wow.
It's like turf. This is the entrance.
Unreal. What is that? That looked like a big
I forgot about it. It is. It's like a giant praying mantis sculpture, like just made out of like repurposed materials.
Wow, that's rad.
It is. Yeah, I definitely recommend this because a lot of people don't see this. You typically just hit the main like New Vegas strip when you go.
Water slides and stuff, it looks like.
That might be new since I went there. I was here maybe 5 years ago or so.
Interesting.
But yeah, awesome spot.
Yeah, it's crazy what they can do with those things because you know that once they ship it across the world, it's more expensive for them to bring it back, so they leave it. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like they call it upcycling. That's the new thing. It's like taking something that was going to get trashed. You know, it's similar to recycling, but it's upcycling it, so it's making it like a commodity like this, or like making it nice.
Right, because it probably would have been like it's more expensive to ship it than just to leave it where it's at. Like the old way of thinking, you would just leave it where it's at and let it become trash. But it's more sustainable if you can make money off of it. If you spend the money up front to ship it and set it up as something like this. Yeah. So that's called upscaling? Upcycling. Okay.
Yeah, upcycling.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's like taking something that's old and repurposing it into something new. So
very cool. Yeah. So that kind of ties into like big insights from ecotourism.
Yeah, definitely. So the first point that I made was there's the market for it, and the second point was really looking at these kind of day excursions and how the community can take like an asset and they can like something that they have like a coral reef or hiking in a jungle or something like that, and they can like turn that into a source of revenue for the people, and they can turn it into like a really like a good form of an economic driver. And so you see a lot of this actually happening in Asia right now. A lot, like China's been doing a lot of it in Southeast Asia as well. And so it's cool to see, how different places kind of adapt differently to, what they have around them.
Figuring out how to bring people in and make money.
Yeah,
like definitely. for the surrounding areas. That's really cool.
And then the third thing, which kind of breaks off this, is there's the economic driver, but once there's like there's a demand for like the economic driver that's there, there's all the things that come with tourism. So it's like handling waste and handling people that want to
the things you don't think about.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was like really an insight from learning about ecotourism as a sustainable development practice.
Wow. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have never thought about a lot of that stuff, but I mean, you're seeing more and more of that everywhere.
Yeah, all through Florida. It's huge in Florida, like the glamping thing.
Absolutely.
Drive through Ocala, you'll see there's spots all over the place where, people are
setting up like the little camps and stuff.
So where I was going with the whole research studies thing is unbeknownst to any of us, what the department did is they took all the information that we submitted to them as far as like what we've been interested in studying, and they go back and they have like a little conclave. So they have like a little retreat that they do at the end of the year, and they figure out for your thesis who your faculty members are most likely going to be based on what your interests are and what their like profession and like their experience is, and like how that would be a best fit.
That's so cool.
Does that make sense?
That does. So that quick tangent, and I'll wrap it back around because we've gone on a lot of tangents. But that reminds me of like the introduction to my MBA program, actually. Yeah. What they did is we did this like really extensive personality test everyone did going into it. And they actually used the results of that to show us like on this kind of spectrum where we fell in a couple different personality traits. Mm-hmm. And like there's a few different, and simplest way I can explain it, I guess, is there's a few different fields, and it showed you where you fell on each spectrum for those, and kind of identified you as like a champion or an implementer or something like that.
Yeah.
And they actually give you like a team of 4 to 5 people every semester in your cohort that you're with for that entire semester. And they actually group them based on your personality traits and how those kind of complement each other. Kind of reminds me of that.
Okay, cool.
It's a really cool way to set things up, like what you're interested in, like how you operate, and how can those skills and those interests complement your work if you're paired with the right people.
Yeah, exactly. It's like finding your team, because your thesis is such a long and a serious kind of thing that you do. It's like you'll do one thesis for your entire life, and some people say it's like the most important thing that they've done. But yeah, it's this huge endeavor, and so they try and pair you up with the best like teammates and advisors and counselors, basically, that that can help you. So you have a chair and you have a member, right? And so I got paired with a gentleman named Professor Manley, Dan Manley, and he has been the department head for the Department of Landscape Architecture for the last year and a half now. And he was like, Professor Manley was like a huge inspiration to me, like a really great, when I say like a great human being, like he's a great father, a great like person to the community, a great person to the department, a mentor, a good friend, like we were talking about earlier, like, having different, people that are passionate about what they do, and just like a good teacher, in the truest sense of the word, like a teacher, like somebody that, informs. And
being passionate is a very big part of that, because if you're not passionate, the material's not going to get through to your students.
And he was also somebody that I could lean on, and, that would understand where I'm coming from, and you know what I mean? But yeah, he's a great guy. And so he was my chair, and so I worked really closely with him. And while I was interning at Kimley Horn in Jacksonville over the summer, he sent me an email and then gave me a call, and he said, "Hey, I have an opportunity. There's an alumni that is doing work in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, that wants some help with the work that they're doing, and we're thinking that it might be appropriate to be like a thesis. And so we'd like to see if that's something that you'd be interested in."
Wow.
And he said, "Mind you, this is," he said, like, "think about this before you say yes or no. This is going to be a lot of work, like a lot of work, like more work than what a traditional thesis is going to be. And you're going to have a little bit more limited of a time frame than the rest of your cohort,
right?
Because of travel and stuff like that." But so I thought about it, and my kind of passions led me that direction. So I got on a call with my clients that I'm working for now, and Professor Manley, and we sat and we talked, and they asked me some different questions, and by the end of the meeting, they said they'd get back to me, and then they got back to me and told me I was the guy for the job.
That's awesome.
And so
what was going through your head when you found out?
I just was so surprised. Like we said before, I just was like, really, me?
Imposter syndrome.
You know what I mean? Imposter syndrome. But now that I look back on it, I feel like I was probably the most prepared candidate, and the most knowledgeable candidate, and just the just really, ready for the role that I was about to, assume.
Yeah.
And so I did my thesis there. And so my thesis was all about the title of my thesis is Space to Place, right? So it's like creating multi-generational open spaces in like the context of the Caribbean like environment that I was working on. And so to lay it out for those of you that are like listening in right now, I've been working for the last summer as a private consultant for the island of Scotland Cay, which is in the Abaco Islands. And the Abaco Islands are known as the Family Islands in the Bahamas. And so
I've got Google Earth pulled up here. So, if you're watching on YouTube.
So this is Great Abaco, and if you want to zoom out, actually, we can probably show them in relation to where Nassau is. So there's Florida, right? Mm-hmm. And then you see the little island with the pin in it, that's Nassau. And so north of it is...
Nassau is where most cruise ships go into, where Senior Frogs is.
Good old Senior Frogs. Cheers to that.
Land of the conga lines and the tequila shots.
That's too funny. And then there's... the Abaco Islands, right?
Which is essentially this whole area here.
Well, so that's Grand Bahama and Freeport and stuff. So to the west there, closer to West Palm, that's Grand Bahama.
This area?
No. Up your cursor up here? A little bit right there, yeah.
Okay.
And so the Abaco Islands are that little like kind of archipelago right there.
Gotcha.
And so there's Marsh Harbor, which you're zooming in on, right? And that's probably the biggest port on the entire island of Grand Abaco, and then just north of it is Great Guanacay, and on Great Guanacay there's a development called Baker's Bay, which is like George Clooney and Tom Brady and like all those, they all have their little island house, and then right just southeast of it is Scotland Cay, and Scotland Cay is the island that I've been working for, and I'm helping them with assessing and kind of like re-envisioning the public domain and public spaces of the island. So in 2019, Hurricane Dorian came and hit the Bahamas.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So is it one homeowners association that kind of covers the entirety of the island?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah, it is. There's a couple
cool
different...
You get to kind of encompass an entire island in that way.
Yeah, exactly. So Scotland Cay is about 350 acres, and there's about 300 half-acre lots that are on the island. And so what I've been brought in and tasked to do is to look at the public domain of the island. So that's their right-of-way, that's their public parks and their gathering spaces and anything that is publicly shared kind of amenity of the island. And I've been tasked to kind of re-envision it and help them to kind of use there was a lot of loss and destruction with Hurricane Dorian in 2019. For those of you that don't know, Hurricane Dorian came and hit the Bahamas really, really bad, especially the Abaco Islands. And it stayed parked over the Abaco Islands for 36 hours. So it's actually the most intense human exposure to a large-scale storm event like that in like recorded human history. So
oh my God.
Usually, if you're from Florida, that usually a hurricane will come and it'll either ride the coast or cut across the state.
It usually comes through pretty quick.
Yeah,
like it does. It's caused a lot of destruction, but it's through pretty quick.
It's like 12, 24 hours, then it's gone. The weird thing about Dorian is it came over the Abaco Islands and it sat there for 36 hours and didn't go anywhere. And so they had, really crazy sustained winds and, saltwater inundation, intrusion and whatnot. But basically the entire island was, in large point destroyed. And so with that destruction, though, the homeowners saw, an opportunity to rebuild and do something different than they did last time or do something really cool. And so that's where my thesis came in is there's two members that are on the homeowners association that the president and another member, and they're both alumni to UF, and so they came in and reached out to the department, and then through then the connections were made, and then I interviewed for the the opportunity to do my thesis there.
Wow.
And that came with a fellowship. And so in October, that was the first time that I went to the island and visited and, got to, apply some of my research that I had done on multi-generational open spaces and, this transformation from space to place and fostering stewardship within the landscape. And I was able to apply the, literary research that I had done in the fall to the island.
That's awesome.
But since then, my thesis ended, and I'm the lucky guy. The clients that I have, they were very enamored with the work that I did and very proud of the work that I did, and so they hired me on to continue to work for them. And so
another cheers for that.
Thank you, brother.
Congrats, man.
Yeah, so it's been kind of crazy because I kind of got baptism by fire.
Yeah,
into, like being a project manager. And so,
yeah, because I remember when you kind of set up the you getting the position for the Bahamas, you said they were like, "Are you sure you want this? It's a lot."
It was just a lot of work. Yeah, so I kind of got thrown feet first into it, but and it was a really hard learning curve, but I learned how to manage my time and how to manage the expectations of my clients, and really how to work on a project of this scale and to work with other homeowners, because it's not just the homeowners association, like the few people that are on the board. It's all the residents of the island, so it's reaching out to them and seeing what their input is and what people value about the island, what people want to see changed, what people never want to see changed. And so it's working with all those different facets.
Very cool process.
Yeah, and so so I've been working on a bunch of different small public parks that are on the island, where people get together and they call them soirees. They get together and they bring finger food and some drinks down there, and they will enjoy 4th of July. And so just recently I was there for the 4th of July and presented to the homeowners that were on the island, and showed the work that we're at and where we're at with the work that we're doing.
That's awesome.
Some of it has to stay under wraps.
Of course.
But yeah, it's been an unbelievable opportunity, and I just can't thank the people that have invited me there, and everyone that I've met there has literally opened their homes to me and their hearts to me and invited me into their little slice of paradise. And that's
awesome.
And this is a place like no other on planet Earth. It's truly an ecological gem in the Bahamas. On the island there's no commercial activity, there's no retail activity, so there's no grocery stores, there's no hotels. It's all it's a community of people that live together. It's just all houses. So they have an airstrip on the island. They have a private airstrip. And
that's the only way to come in and go out.
Well, they have the marina too, so you can bring your boat over.
Plane,
some people do crossings from Florida, but I usually fly out private out of Fort Lauderdale, and from Fort Lauderdale to Scotland Cay, it's about an hour and a half, and then you're on the island.
Okay, not bad.
So yeah, I've been doing consulting for the island for the last couple months, and it's been a great opportunity, and we're starting to get closer to what we want to do for these first couple items that we've been addressing. So it's going to be really cool to be able to go back and see the fruit of my all my hard work.
Yeah, because
all the hard work coming to fruition.
I hadn't thought through this yet, but with the nature of your work, you probably do a lot of work to really set things up, and then all of a sudden it gets built, it gets implemented.
Yeah, that's
right?
that's the really cool part. Is
Yeah.
when it's oh my gosh, they're the construction crew is starting. Next week, not next. That's not when they're starting.
Yeah,
but when you have that moment, it's wow, they're gonna start building. You know what I mean? This is what I designed. Is gonna get built, and it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about when I do art, I see it in my mind's eye. I see it right up here, and then it's about how can I translate it to a final product,
pen to paper.
Exactly. And so with my 2D art, it's always been painting or some sort of translation in that aspect. But with this, the really cool thing is going there and it's wow, that that palapa, that gazebo, that community heart, and that's one of the biggest things that I can speak about that I'm doing there. Is I'm building like a heart for this community, an area where they can all like gather as a community and enjoy their time when they're there, and for their grandkids and their great grandkids, and for generations in the future. It's like creating this area that's really important to them, and so
that's awesome, man.
So yeah, placemaking is a big thing that I'm involved in here.
I am very much looking forward to seeing the pictures when that comes to fruition. That sounds awesome.
Definitely. Well, maybe if I'm lucky, one day I might be able to have a spot over there, and we can.
Sure. Yeah. I would absolutely. Absolutely, man.
It'd be awesome.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm super excited. It's I've never seen or been in a space like this before in my entire life. It's really cool. And the really cool thing, this is where it gets really kind of crazy, is if you zoom out, Scotland Cay is like one of the closest islands in the Caribbean to Africa. So like when you stand on that Atlantic coast and look over, there's nothing between like you and the continent of Africa.
Wow.
So keep going back. There's Bermuda, but yeah.
Wow.
So like it's like when you're there,
you're just staring out into
Brody,
endless water.
It's just like you're on the edge of the world.
Yeah.
It's really kind of cool.
It literally looks like the edge of the world on the map if you look. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, you got to go up north a little bit. Yeah, there you go. It's like right.
It looks like you're on the edge of the world right here.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So you've been working on that through the summer.
Uh-huh.
But what we have not mentioned yet is you actually just kind of got prepped up for a new position with a new firm that you're starting with in Tampa.
Yeah, so I'm about to move to Tampa within the next week. So
yeah,
I've been doing a lot of packing.
Another big all of a sudden move.
I know, right? It's kind of crazy, but I'm really excited. So
Tampa's a really cool city, so I'll definitely visit you down there.
Yeah, definitely. I hope you do.
Yeah, it's fun.
I've never really been to Tampa. I haven't experienced it too much, but I'm really excited to go and experience a new area and a new spot. But yeah, I'm moving to Tampa. I'm working for a firm called RVI, and I met some really great people over there. I felt like it was a good fit, and so I'm going to be living in Tampa and working over there.
Awesome.
So,
do you have an idea of some of the projects you might be working on yet?
Yeah, definitely. They do a lot of work, public work within the city. So, public parks, and Tampa cool. is growing so much.
Probably, I would probably call it the fastest growing city in Florida. Probably. If not the Southeast. Yeah. I mean, it's
Jacksonville is close.
Jacksonville's got to be close.
Yeah, but Tampa is really, really cool. There's a lot of people moving there. There's a really cool like young professional sense there. And,
it's incredibly young
there. So I'm excited to be able to experience that. And the cool thing is that, well, maybe it's not the cool thing if you're a Floridian, but over 1,000 people on average move to Florida every single day.
That's insane.
So
that's too much.
Yeah. Right. So there's tons of people moving to Florida, and so a lot of what's going on right now, and a lot of the work that I'll be handling as well is development. And so it's like, how do we house all these people that are moving to Florida?
Prepping the infrastructure to be able to handle that.
Exactly. So it's it's residential developments, but also it's cool because they're able to do some really cool public park works, and that's more in my field, especially when you're working with a municipality. It's a lot more like the flashy stuff, right? So like it's working on the public parks that everyone kind of gets to see, and you get to do cool stuff with maybe an art installation. That's always exciting. Or maybe it's a special kind of conceptual design that like flows through the entire park that you don't get to see until one of my internships, I had an opportunity to work with a lady that was doing some work for a public park, and her whole idea was to do from Google Earth the paving pattern for the like the pavers and the walkways was a barcode, and then if you like went on Google Earth and scanned it, you could
Whoa. That's badass.
you could like see like whatever, you know.
I love that.
But it's
You do a QR code.
yeah, right.
Yeah, that might be even better.
So it's public works give you the opportunity to do cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so
Any cities that or places in particular that you can think of that you could foresee inspiring you, like when you get your work started, like places that stand out that you've been to?
yeah, Chicago for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love that. The park, that was one of the most impressive things about Chicago. I'll probably butcher this background, but essentially the idea I got from it was that there was someone that bought the entire river, like the entire kind of like upfront riverscape, and just owned the land. And he put as a provision in his ownership that the land would always have to be kept as public park space.
You're completely right.
I am right. Okay.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So
if you go there, essentially the entire riverscape is all park.
Yep.
And it's beautiful. It's like there's nothing obstructing the view of it. You can, if you go out onto the water, you just see this beautiful park space. If you're walking through it, it's clear view of like the water and the lakes and everything. It's awesome.
yeah, and to your point, I'm pretty sure that large sections of Lake Michigan are the same way.
Really?
So,
Okay,
yeah,
that's awesome.
So the planners were really smart when they laid it out. You know, Chicago after the fire, and for those of you that don't know, Chicago, you know, was a city, and then there was a huge fire that burnt most of the city down. After the fire, they were really smart about their zoning and their planning kind of practices. And so exactly what you said, all along the river, it's all public, like park space, which at the time was probably frowned upon, but now all these years later, it makes for like a very attractive and a very like a
Brings in a lot of people.
exactly.
At the time, like the conventional thinking probably would have said, no, we've got to compete with these other cities. We've got to compete with New York and LA and all these other big cities, and we've got to build as much as we can as fast as we can. But it turns out that if you go now, it really stands out from a lot of those cities in that way.
Definitely. Chicago's really cool. The University of Florida, they sent us up to Seattle. That was really cool.
That's a place I want to get up to.
Yeah, it's really cool. So like the Space Needle area and like the kind of touristy spot was really, really cool. Where else? I really like St. Augustine. So that's like the flip side of that coin. It's like St. Augustine is cool, especially the colonial district, because it's like it's so old and you know antiquated, and there's all the history, and it's like this first spot in the United States.
It's like going in a time machine.
Oh
it
my
really
gosh, it's
is.
so cool.
You can walk around on forts and stuff. Like it's wild.
It's so cool.
That was a really cool thing about growing up in Jacksonville is we took field trips to St. Augustine all the time, and it was very easy for teachers to justify like learning the history behind the state. So we would take these field trips to St. Augustine and just walk around on Fort Caroline through some of the historic districts, and it was really neat.
Yeah.
It's an awesome city.
St. Augustine's cool for sure. Other than that, there's a couple cool spots in the southeast. Charleston's beautiful. New Orleans is cool too, the French Quarter.
Oh yeah.
You could tell I tend more towards like antiquated, like the older kind of.
Which is cool though. It's cool to be able to highlight a city's history in that way,
definitely.
because that leans a lot into the tourism, right? If you've got some of that, people want to visit that city to learn about where it started. So if you've got if you've got some of that, and Chicago does a good job of that as well. It's got some of the history built in there too, where you can come and really learn about what went into it.
Well, it's kind of the same thing with why people like photos of old boots, like an old like farmhouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like paintings of that stuff. It's because when you look at something like that, it has history to it. It tells a story, you know what I mean? Whereas, something else, that's like I tend more towards the classic arts and like that sort of thing, as opposed to like some more of I like modern art, but like some of the ultra modern stuff, it's not as attractive to me. But that just be,
Well, you got a really good background of art history in your education.
But that's just what interests me. You know what I mean? There's a beautiful saying. It's like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And like, the cool thing about art is anything can be artistic as long as it, invokes an emotion in you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
just about how you implement it, how you build it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Well, I have a couple of questions that I always like to ask in my interviews.
I
So
can't wait. Let's.
I'll go ahead and hit you with the first one.
I knew there were going to be a couple. Let's do it.
Okay, so the first one is essentially this. You've gone through some of your career now, right?
Yeah.
And along with that comes wisdom, lessons that you learn along the way. You've talked about some pretty pivotal moments that you've gone through and learned things. If there was a couple things, so if you could go back in time and talk to a young Blake as he was getting into the industry, what are a couple things that you would tell him to do differently based on the wisdom and the knowledge that you have now?
I think I would say, don't sell yourself short. That's probably the biggest thing, is never sell yourself short, is always take pride in the things that you do. Always recognize the hard work that you put in and all the hours that you've really put in, especially if I'm talking to young Blake. Be proud of where you've gotten, and to really, take pride in how you've gotten there. And so that's the biggest thing for me now that I'm done with my master's, now that I have my career set up. I'm, for one of the first times in my life, I'm really passionate.
Or maybe lives. We don't know for sure.
I'm really passionate about where I'm at, where I've gotten, and how I've gotten there, and I couldn't be happier with where I'm at right now.
That's awesome.
I'm at the tipping point where my career is about to tip off, and where it already kind of has.
It has. I would say so.
Moving to a new city, that's really exciting, and so I'm very excited. I feel like I'm about to launch, and
the world's your oyster.
For a long time, I've been sitting, I've been on the plane with the seatbelt sign on, and we've been waiting on the runway. And so now we're finally going to take off. So
reminds me of the feeling you get if you're on a cruise ship. So I took a cruise when I was 19, not 21 yet. But if you get into international waters, you're allowed to drink on it. It reminds me of the feeling you get when they say you are now in international waters. You're good to go.
Yeah.
Green light's on.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. That's an awesome tip, man. I mean, it really is a big theme I noticed in your journey so far. And as your friend, I am incredibly happy to hear that you're in that place and opportunity and ready for the future.
Yeah,
it's exciting. Well, another question I like to ask is, so this is called Profession Session, the show, right? What does being a professional mean to you personally?
I think being a professional is, it's being, it's being really good at your craft, but there's, some other things that go along with that. It's being extremely knowledgeable about, your craft, and being able to determine what the correct route is when there's, a couple things laid out in front of you. So being a professional to me is being able to know, what the best avenue to go down is. And so, it's assessing, how the field's laid out, and it's, being able to determine, this is the right call, this is the wrong call, this is, the important call. Sometimes, you don't want to do something, but it's the important thing to do, for whether it's the longevity of the firm, or whether it's the longevity of your own business, or, just even the task, project, or, collective that you're working with. So
I love that. Just being able to make the right calls given your background and your knowledge.
Yeah, I guess in essence, if you were to synthesize that down, it's taking all of the information that you have and making a really smart decision. I don't know, I just feel like every professional that I've ever admired or known, they've always had a good way of being able to do that.
Yeah, make the right decision at a moment's notice and really turn things around.
And it goes back to intuition.
Yeah.
I think intuition is just a big, driving factor in my life, is being able to think quick on your feet.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, that's a great answer. And the last thing I would ask you is just, do you have anything else, kind of parting wisdom, anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, don't. It goes back to don't sell yourself short, but don't ever be scared to do something that that other people might tell you. Don't be afraid to take a leap of faith. If you really are passionate about something, and especially when it comes to your career, or you find yourself enjoying something a lot, you enjoy something more than what you're doing right now, don't be afraid to take the time off and to research something new, or to see about maybe this is what I want to do. I think it's really important to be honest with yourself. So jump in both feet first, and kind of just really try and experience whatever it is that you're passionate about. So I guess follow your passion.
Follow your passion, even if it doesn't seem like the obvious choice.
Well, I think that a lot of times, especially young people, you can get kind of bogged down by your peers, and I think especially in our generation, there's a really bad habit of everyone tries to pull each other down instead of building each other up, and that's the test of true friends. Your true friends and people that really do care about you, they'll inspire you, and they'll push you to be a better person than you are now. And so like my buddies Connor Hare and Nick Giovanetti, they always try and inspire me to be a better person, you know what I mean? And so they, even them, they have their own company called Top Shelf Nutrition. It's their own little supplement company. They would be great people to
maybe we could set it up. Sure.
Yeah,
yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so they have
their
own supplement company, and one thing that I've always really enjoyed about them is that they've always inspired me to be better than I am, and to jump in with both my feet, and
that's awesome.
Really be passionate about what I want to do. And so
it's important to find those people and keep them in your life.
Yeah.
And you've been, ever since I met you, you've been that kind of person to me. Absolutely, man.
You've
always
brother.
been the kind of person that builds up your friends around you.
Yeah, you have to, for sure.
I agree.
There's a saying that alphas build up the people around them. They don't tear them down. And I feel like nowadays people can really get teared down by their peers, and people get excited about failure, and they don't get excited about success, especially with their friends. So
well, that is a great note to leave it on. Blake, thank you
Cool.
so much for coming here today,
Dude.
and imparting some awesome wisdom.
Thank you
awesome
so much,
wisdom.
brother. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This has been a very unique conversation, something I did not know a lot about, that I got to learn a lot of cool stuff about, and I've got to thank you for that.
Thank you, brother.
And
Thank
you
for bringing me on.
are one of the foremost professionals I know. This has been awesome.
Well, I'm happy that you and I have the friendship that we have.
Me too, man.
I value that. So.
Me too. Well, thanks again, and this has been Profession Session. I'm your host, Brody Vinson. My guest has been Blake Linquist of an incredible career that's kicking off running.
Yeah.
Check his, look out for Scotland K. Sounds like it's going to be making some awesome strides in the future due to this guy, and then look out for Tampa.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to see, any of my work or anything, you can, find me at blakelinquist.com.
Go to blakelinquist.com, and that will be in the description if you're watching on YouTube, and the show notes if you're listening on any podcast platforms. And I will make sure that you can find Blake on Instagram, any kind of relevant platform, so you can check out his stuff. Awesome.
Cool.
And that's a podcast.
There we go. It's a wrap.
Thanks so much for tuning into Profession Session. I'm your host, Brody Vinson. Stay tuned for new episodes every week and short clips of deep dives into specific topics that I put out on different social media channels. We could be found on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, all major podcast platforms. You can find my guest in the details of this video or podcast. And if you happen to know a young standout business owner, professional, or entrepreneur that you would think would be a good fit for Profession Session, DM me or get in contact with me anywhere and just let me know. And they could be the next to tell their story here. Until next time, again, this has been Profession Session. Stay focused, stay hustling, and stay networking.